Somehow, VR Troopers returned. Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for Power Rangers Prime. And full disclosure, I already made a somehow Palpatine return style joke in my Boom Boonja review, which I recorded before this but is coming out tomorrow. Weebly wobbly, timey-wimey, but I just couldn't resist making the joke again. It was just too good and too timely for this, and I also made it on Twitter, so I don't know. I'm having a good time. But regardless, if you don't know what Power Rangers Prime is, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out. Power Rangers Prime is kind of our reboot comic series in the vein of Ultimate Comics and stuff like that, where it's basically like an alternate universe take, allowing them to reimagine things. Oddly enough, very timely, just in terms of the fact that Marvel recently brought back their Ultimate Comics and DC's doing their new Absolute series, so I just find that kind of interesting. We don't know if there's ever going to be any connections to the other series. Honestly, I'd be shocked if there wasn't. I don't think in the immediate future there will be, because I think they're going to be going all in on their own storyline right now, but I imagine like by the time they wrap it up, they might touch a connection to that. Maybe there'll be some sort of huge reveal that the consequences of Darkest Hour created this universe, but as of right now, we don't have a confusing lead-in to this. Like usually when you have like a new universe, well I guess I don't know how the original Ultimate Universe started, to be honest. I know how the new one came back is very convoluted and tied to the events of Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars. But sometimes when you get a reset for new comic readers, you'll have like a vastly complicated multiversal storyline behind why that universe was created, like the New 52. But right now, it's just starting cold. There's no connections you can just pick. I mean, there's connections to like lore and stuff. Like if you're a Power Rangers fan, you're going to recognize certain names and dates. Names and dates, but you know what I mean. You're going to recognize certain names and lore beats. But this is a good starting point for new readers. Like it doesn't have any storyline connections that you need to worry about not knowing. And it's very interesting because I am curious what is similar and what is different from the main universe. And obviously there is some very clear differences, but there are certain things that are kind of the same in a way, which makes me curious about certain things. But the general premise is you have an Earth that's been occupied by Eltar for a long time. Long ago, these enemies called like the Beast Brigade or the Beastie Boys attacked, and it was too much for them, and Eltar came in and helped, but then they occupied and stayed, and it's kind of like they're under their rule. And as Eltar, it's kind of like the Empire, the villains and stuff like that, which is very interesting. I would say usually you don't have that because for the most part fans associate Eltar with the good guys in Zordon. Of course there was the Eltarian war arc in the comics, but for the most part people usually associate it with good. So it's an interesting flip of the script. So you have that set up, and they basically outlawed Power Rangers for whatever reason. You have Lauren explaining at one point that the Rangers helped, but the Beastie Boys were too much for them. They played sabotage and just it was over. And after the events of the war or whatever, I guess Power Rangers have been outlawed, as we see Lauren is being hunted down by the Eltarians. And she goes to morph, and you know, she does Samurais or Go-Go Samurai. And this is a nitpick, not something I'm really truly upset they didn't change, but they had the opportunity to not use that lame morph call. I never understood the Go-Go Samurai, the Go-Go Megaforce. Like, you're doing the full court MMPR nostalgia press. Just say it's Morphin' Time. I would have just been fine if they did It's Morphin' Time for every roll call for the all time if they didn't do the go-go thing. It was just so weird. It was like they had AI generate an MMPR nostalgia morph call and they blew it. I don't know, I just thought that was weird. She goes to morph and they blast her morpher. I think it implies that her powers are destroyed, which will probably set up for whatever new powers she's going to be getting. And she's on the run from them, and she's found by a guy who I think his name is Mark. I'm going to at least call him Mark for this review. And he's half Equation, and he goes to basically this Eltarian academy, and we establish several different characters. One guy that looks like he's out of a Cobra Kai movie or show or whatever. This other guy that's from Eltar. He was born on, or well, he's Eltarian, but he was born on Earth, and he seems to be, I don't think they directly say it, but it seems like he's very interested in Power Rangers. It seems like he's really interested in studying them, which is interesting. But you kind of establish what will probably be our main team of characters there, and that's where you learn about the history of everything. And it's a good starting spot. I'd be really curious to get into the mind of somebody that like never had any experience with the franchise outside of, just in general, you could just go in totally cold, but maybe just watch MMPR when they were younger, because this does have a lot of really interesting like lore connections and stuff, but so it seems like there's a lot to take in. Like there really is a lot. Like I felt like this is an issue you have to read a couple times because you're doing a lot of world building, and there's also lots of little details that like borrow from the Power Rangers universe we know. But I wonder if that aspect almost comes across as less intimidating for new readers, just because I was like trying to catch everything and like say, is this something that already exists? Like the Beast Brigade, I'm like, is that already a thing? Is this new? Like I know that the roommate character that was taking care of Lauren mentioned like he's from Ambrosia or Andrasia or whatever, and I looked that up. I'm like, oh yeah, that was Super Megaforce. That was Orion's planet. So there's all kinds of stuff like that I was looking out for, and it seemed like at one point, like when the Eltarians came, that Bulk was president. At least it looked kind of like Bulk from what I remember, and there was like an equation already with him. And that brings into question what I'm curious about is similar and different. Obviously, we know this world we're dropped into is very different than the main PR world in any form we've seen, but it seems like it's also like in the far future, because Lauren's describing like the way the Power Rangers were, and that clearly they were established in a form that we're, in a way we're used to. You know, maybe this is a universe where Lauren was just Red Ranger from the jump, but clearly there was some similar status quo things with that, and it makes me curious, like when we meet other characters, other variants of characters we know, how similar their histories are going to be. I'm wondering, is this a world where the history up until the Eltarian occupation was somewhat similar to what we're familiar with, and then it changed, or are there going to be some more crazy differences? Like, are we going to meet characters, variants of MMPR characters that are different even before this? You know, because we do meet Rita at the very end, and there was an interesting little teaser, like she shows up at the end, and obviously kind of a nice little, like, you know, repilot homage where she's like, after all these years I'm free, and this feels like a repilot. This honestly feels like what the show should be doing, like an animated series that's like a reboot would be great. But there's also like the beginning monologue talking about like, do we need heroes? And they show these scenes of this girl or this woman with like a hand with these different colors on it, and that's clearly Rita. So I'm curious how she's going to be connected. I get a feeling she's going to be connected to giving them their new powers just based off of what they tease at the beginning, but that's really interesting. But way to bury the lead though, Dawson. Welcome back, VR Troopers. Like, so they're seemingly heroes that work for Eltar, which is interesting because obviously we know that the VR Troopers are virtual reality troopers. Virtual reality troopers! It's right in the theme. So I don't know if that will ever come into play at all, but that was cool. They have slightly different designs, but man, that's neat. We really love if we could see the other Saban quote-unquote cinematic universe characters get back Master Rider, get back the Beetleborgs, but we know we need the one true hero to come in and save us. The White Blaster Beetleborg! Borg! Blast! But no messing around. We need the real version, Count Fangula, milk cartons and all. That was a really cool little thing to show. I'll be curious if that's just going to be a thing we see in the background. I'm going to assume they're going to be characters we're going to meet. So that was really neat. And I would love if they really did bring in the Beetleborgs or Master Rider or Mystic Knights or whatever. I've honestly always wondered what the world would look like. I mean, that makes it sound like the world would be drastically changed, but what it would look like if Saban had been successful at kind of building out a connected universe. You know, I did a video, I think a year ago or so, that was like ranking all of the like Maritoku shows. And I was thinking about that when I was making the list. I was like, what would have been like if VR Troopers and Beetleborgs had continued? Obviously, they had the problem of like the footage stopping, but they did keep trying to bring back Metal Hero, so there would have been some material there. Still think it was a missed opportunity to not make Gavin a VR Trooper when we did Beast Morphers instead of Chaka When the Walls Fell or whatever they did with him. But anyway, that was super cool. But I really, really enjoyed this. You know, it was very much a place-setting issue. It was one of those issues that, like, got to the end and I'm like, oh, it's already over, just because I was very engaged in it, but it felt just like basically the setup of the core dynamics of the world, which is what it should be. But I'm very interested in it. I love how the Power Rangers comics have transformed Power Rangers into something that feels like a legitimate superhero comic book, and I love reading something that's like an Ultimate Universe, Absolute Universe type of reimagining, and it's really cool to see all the similarities and differences, and I'm really interested to see how it checks out. And also, I like that we're going into uncharted territory. As much as I love the old standard comics and would have loved to have seen how they tackled the events of Season 3 and Zeo and beyond, it's nice for them to finally break free. Like, I kept saying that in the old comics, I'm like, you don't need to follow the show so closely in a way. Like, I wanted to see Season 3, but you can still do Season 3, but do whatever you want. It's a different universe. But this is even beyond that. We're totally do our own thing, and it's where I'm really happy to see the comics go. It is also interesting to see them focus on Lauren and a little bit on the Samurai Rangers there, mainly because people have said that they think that Samurai would have been possibly one of the only opportunities for Power Rangers to follow another iconic team, because Samurai was a series a lot of kids grew up with and was probably the most PR had been in the spotlight since MMPR when they came back, and I'm wondering how many readers are going to be intrigued by that or have nostalgia for it, because I have seen that around. Like, I definitely feel old when I see people say I grew up with Disney era, but I feel really old when I see people say they grew up with Samurai. It's like, oh my god, that feels like a million years ago, but it also feels like last Tuesday. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I definitely recommend you check it out if you're a comic fan. I think it's a good starting spot. I think it's a good place for comic fans to continue as well. But let me know what you thought of the comic and the return of the VR Troopers. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.